It's more fun in the Philippines. I sold you. You probably heard about these taglines. Both have been famous tourist destinations among travelers for different aspects such as tourist spots, food, pop music, and one-of-a-kind culture. Throughout the years, what could be their culture differences? Let's know about that in this FunPik special on Korea and Philippines cultural differences. ItsKatStyle. 안녕하세요 여러분. 저는 FunPik PD Kat back with another video for none other than FunPik PD. And I can't believe this is already the 8th video that I made for FunPik. And if you're new to this channel and interested in K-contents from language, culture, travel, and much more, you can go over the past videos and binge watch. I really work hard in editing those. And now for today's discussion is a very popular topic. And I've noticed that some students here in the Philippines could be looking for these pieces of information. But a disclaimer, some of the information that I will present to you are mostly based on my observations, while some are backed up by other people's sentiments or articles and news that I've read on the internet. In addition, I'm gonna be telling these observations from the perspective of a Filipino who lives in the Philippines. Although I could say I have a special connection with Korea throughout the last 10 years, almost half of my life, I have been involved in learning their language, visiting Korea, and understanding their culture. And as I believe that in knowing comes loving, so it was inevitable for me to fall in love with Korea, if you'd like to put it that way. Anyway, without further ado, 𝗪𝗵𝘁 𝗪𝗵𝘁 가자! If you're watching Running Man, Hang Out With You, I Live Alone, Knowing Brothers, Street Woman Fighter, and a lot more, you'll know those scenes couldn't happen for just one day or in a short period of time. And the magic of it comes from their system of pre-recording or 촬영 a week, a month, or even a year before the actual airing date. And that gap also helps in filling episodes per week. So as an example, recently J-Sok, the nation's MC, couldn't take part in one of their 촬영 due to quarantine, and you might be wondering how he could appear immediately on the next episode. On another instance, at times they mention, oh, maybe this episode will appear on J-Sok's birthday. Is this a special episode for him? There's also that, because they have a different calendar on the actual airing of their episodes. And I think it's really the charm of Korean variety shows, since they got time to enhance the video and fully maximize the viewing experience of the audience through video editing or pyeonjip. And I really respect the long hours they dedicate in filming and editing the videos to come up with one episode. The CG, subtitles, and background music are really fascinating, and those inspired me to be in this field as well. On the other hand, in the Philippines, most of our variety shows are streamed live. Filipino variety shows are actually more known to be called as noontime shows, which, like how it's called, it's aired during noontime or lunchtime. So it's been a culture for us to share a meal while watching TV. To mention, the top shows here are It's Showtime and 𝗵𝗵𝗁, which is the longest running noontime show here in the Philippines. The happenings, the games, the hosting, ad-libs, and the camera movements all happen in real time, which makes them more cautious in making mistakes and being careful with what they want to say. And this show setup are actually similar to that of theater, where there are live audiences. Usually, the program is divided into segments with intermissions in between, such as singing and dancing. However, these days, due to the current challenge we are facing, the audiences are at home, so one of the efforts is through live raffle draws, which will be connected through a phone call. Therefore, this effort makes the overall experience more interactive. In Korea, the cost of living is considered expensive for us Filipinos and even for Koreans. On the other hand, Philippines' cost of living are considered cheap. This difference have already been sealed in my mind through various observations and sentiments from people that I was able to interview. First is through direct experience when my friends and I visited Korea last June 2019. We made a research that a meal would cost around 250 to 500 pesos or around 5,000 to 10,000 won, which is way beyond the normal price of one Jollibee meal in the Philippines. Jollibee chicken meal is approximately 100 pesos, and if you're into local carinderias, you can have a decent meal for 50 to 60 pesos only. Although that time we really prepared enough money to go on our daily expenses, so I wasn't able to notice the heaviness and thought it was just their normal cost of living. Second, I was able to interview Miss Joyce, Miss Paula, and Miss 𝗪𝗂𝘅, who are Filipino expats living in Korea. They all mentioned that the cost of living in Korea is really expensive, especially when it comes to housing and food and fruits. Through my research, what makes the housing really expensive are the housing deposits. Apartments in Korea typically have a higher key deposit. Usually, it starts from 5 million won and up, plus the monthly rent. In the Philippines, you can live in a dormitory or apartment for a huge range as cheap as 10,000 to 40,000 pesos, I think. Lastly, I saw this comparison on TikTok, which made me see more the differences of living in Korea versus the Philippines. Korea's 1,000 won is equivalent to almost $1. If Korea's 1,000 won is equivalent to $1, then $1 in the Philippines is equivalent to 50 pesos, which is enough to get men a haircut in a street barber shop, buy a meal, and a lot more. And I'm sorry to tell you guys, if you're a rice lover from the Philippines who would like to visit Korea, 1 cup of instant rice is 2,000 to 3,000 won, which is only 10 pesos in the Philippines. Because of the challenges we're facing today, we've known the value and importance of a good healthcare system that we can afford. In Korea, the public healthcare system is considered cheap, or to say it better, it is offered in a reasonable price. On average, residents only need to cover 20% of their medical treatments, which is similar to that of a service fee. Most monthly healthcare costs around 120,000 Korean won. South Korea's single-payer health system ranks 19 overall in the World Index of Healthcare Innovation. With their rising technology, Korea performs especially well at keeping their healthcare spending low. On the other hand, according to a news report, the Philippines is the second most expensive country in terms of medical expenses in Southeast Asia. A sad reality is that many Filipinos cannot afford to pay their hospital bills. Just 1 month of hospitalization will equivalent to 2 million pesos, which is unjust to the monthly salary of an ordinary Filipino can afford. CLAYGO, or clean as you go. This is the unspoken rule to take care of yourselves, to take care of your belongings, and most especially your trash. It's that rule that measures your discipline and awareness to your surroundings and respect for other people or new customers. In Korea, I could say it is embedded already in their culture, or there is an unspoken strict implementation of this rule. If you eat in a fast food chain, they clean it up themselves, collect the plate, paper cups, put it in a tray, and place it on a designated area. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, there is a lack of implementation of this rule. Some Filipinos have the idea that since there are busboys and girls, it is part of their duties to do such thing. And funnily, this has been a culture that many Koreans saw as fascinating. Although there are movements already on social media who encourage other people to CLAYGO, so that's a good thing. This is another thing that truly fascinates me. It's the usage of mobile applications. For this category, I will just mention a few substitutes that differ in both countries. Commonly in the Philippines and most countries, Google is the #1 search engine. But in Korea, Naver is the most used one. Naver is a South Korean online platform that is operated by Naver Corporation. It has been there since 1999 as the first web portal in South Korea. And And then when it comes to shopping, Korea has Coupang and the Philippines' go-to app is Shopee. Though Shopee has recently started its operations in Korea, it was to help local merchants reach customers in market where Shopee operates. When it comes to messaging app, Korea has KakaoTalk and the Philippines mostly rely on Facebook Messenger. With this, we can say that Philippines mostly follow global trends, but I really like how Korea were able to develop their own applications, support it, and utilize it. When it comes to activities, we can think of many things and it differs from person to person. But then we can't deny that the geography and location where we belong affects our activities or lifestyle. For this, I noticed that in Korea, Koreans are used to walking and riding their bikes around park or landscapes. Their cities are really bike-friendly, that they even have numerous stations of e-bicycles, which you can rent conveniently. On the other hand, you might think that if you're living in the Philippines, we Filipinos mostly go to the beach or enjoy nature, though that occasionally happen. Most of the time, you'll see people, friends, and families roaming around malls. Yes, shopping malls. We have this mall culture in the Philippines. And I think that happened inevitably because of how consumerism and malls stood closer in the main cities. Therefore, they are more accessible than commuting to the beach or hiking a mountain. I think the scorching heat of the sun also made Filipinos spend hours in malls that are often fully air-conditioned. But I do hope we can have more accessible beaches through convenient transportation so we can explore the magnificent beauty of our nature. Last but not least is the obvious difference in seasons. Korea has 4 seasons, that's winter, spring, summer, and fall, which makes the experience of visiting the country different every time. So far, I have only visited Korea during summer and autumn, but I hope I can experience each season in Korea. For the Philippines, we have 2 seasons, that's summer and hot summer. Just kidding. It's rainy season. I also know and read through reports that in Korea, yellow dust is prevalent, that everyday Koreans check on the forecast on air quality. Because of such events, there are sadly less days with clear skies, and at night there are fewer stars in Korea. While in the Philippines, we have no concept of yellow dust. But pollution is also a struggle here. Comparatively, Koreans think the skies here in the Philippines are clear and sunny, and at the same time, at night there appears to be gazillions of stars. Despite the differences of each country, I came to respect and appreciate the beauty of Korea and the Philippines on its own. As culture is evolving, we can absorb what's a good practice from each country or maybe just learn about each other's differences. And maybe, in knowing, there may sprung similar culture and traditions that you didn't know about. If you're curious about that, make sure to catch the next episode of this short content series where we will be tackling the similarities of Korea and Philippines culture. Once again, it's CatStyle. See you on my next video. Annyeong!